I stood, watching droplets of water glimmer in the light of the moon as they dripped off the heavy metal frame that supported the bridge. Standing on the edge, I looked at the valley below, at least a few hundred feet below, barely illuminated by the glow of the moon. I sighed and closed my eyes, leaning forward. This is it, I thought. Not a bad view before I go. I stood there for what felt like an eternity before I let out a long, exasperated sigh. Still can't bring myself to do it, I said in a tone just barely a whisper. I turned and started to climb back over the railing and slipped on the rainwater that covered the bridge, and I fell. Closed my eyes and waited for the sweet embrace of death. I opened my eyes and saw a bright golden glow envelop me. Before I could react and realize what was happening, there was a crackle and everything was gone in a flash of light. I don't know how long I was out, but when I awoke, I stood in a strange room. Or was it a room? I couldn't tell. It was just white everywhere as far as I could see. I sat for what felt like forever before a large golden glowing aura developed in front of me. Unable to make out the creature's face or its body or anything, I just heard its voice, sharp but sweet in a kind of weird way, break out to me, telling me, "You're not ready to die yet. You gotta fight on, if not for yourself, then for others." I just stared at the figure, wondering what it was meaning. I didn't understand what was going on at the time. I just sat there sputtering like a dumb idiot trying to make words. "It's alright. You're gonna be fine. I'm sending you to help others who need you more," she said softly. I was feeling strange, but I don't know how to explain it. My body felt warm as her aura enveloped me. Everything began turning dark, but I don't understand what was going on, and everything went black, and I was sleeping again. I awoke again looking around, but the figure was nowhere to be seen. I laid in a heap of mud in the middle of a forest. I could see the darkness around me and make out the highlights of trees. I focused, and a weird green light crept over everything, and I could see. I still didn't understand what was going on, but as I tried to get up, I stumbled and fell. Looking down, I realized I had hooves and 4 legs. I don't know why, but it felt kind of right in a way. I tried getting up and stumbled around. Finally getting my bearings about a little bit better, I could slowly walk. I walked for what felt like hours in a direction. I didn't know why, but that direction just felt right. I stared out in the distance, scanning the tree line. Still, no seem to break into any openings. I just walked, creeping along. I could hear the sounds of birds chirping, crickets making their weird but peaceful songs. But I still don't know. I could not tell what I looked like, but when I rubbed my 4 legs together, there was no feeling of fur. It felt hard, almost like a rock, but it had some kind of give to it. It wasn't flesh, but I couldn't make out what it was yet. I walked for a while longer, but I heard a scream off in the distance. Someone yelling help. I ran. I don't know how I knew how to run like this, but I ran at speeds no average person should be able to go at. Darting around trees like I lived my life here and I knew every twist and turn. Finally I came upon the scene. Gruesome and battering. An overturned wagon, half on fire. I could see a filly in the back of it, crying for her mother. Out a couple feet away from the wagon was a woman ripped in half, torn apart. I just stared on in disbelief. "Changeling," I heard a gruesome buck say behind me. I turned turned around and saw a male pony standing there clad in armor. Looked like leather, but I couldn't quite tell in the moonlight. I could see dark stains over his face and what looked like chunks of flesh hanging from a mace that he had in his teeth. He charged me. Quickly darting to the side, he ran past, but not before catching me in the hind leg with the end of his mace. I let out a quick, sharp scream as it dug into my flesh. Or was it flesh? I don't know. I'll have to figure this shit out later. I just kept on my toes, darting as he swung over. I heard a tinging noise. I felt something bounce off my back. I turned around to see a unicorn male with a bow in his magic, firing as quick as he could, but the arrows just keep bouncing off. I heard another buck scream, "I thought they were all dead." And I turned around again to see a buck standing there with a sword clenched in his teeth. As he started running at me, I dodged to the side and the blade bounced off my shoulder. He stared on in disbelief at me. I just stared right back at him. I could barely make out the ruffledness of a beard on him. And grisly as he looked, I didn't know what to make of it. His face was scarred, and he smelled putrid, of rotting meat and decay and defecation. He swung wildly at me, and I watched on behind him as the buck with the mace ran at the carriage, seeing that the little filly had come out. "Get away from her," I yelled, and I charged past, knocking the buck with the sword on his side. Tackling the buck with the mace, I wrapped my forelegs around his throat and gave a quick heave, and I heaved him over my shoulder. On the ground, and I squeezed. I watched his face turn slate purple as he gasped for breath. I watched his eyes bulge, and I heard a deathly crunch as his neck broke in my hooves. He fell limp. Picking up the mace in my teeth, I threw it at the buck with the sword as he charged at me. He ducked under it quickly and quickly ran quicker. I got up to my hooves and I charged at him. And I headbutted him as hard as I could, the horn of my head lashing the side of his face and popping his eye as he fell on the ground screaming. The stallion with the bow kept firing. I charged at him and lowered my head, my horn digging into the underside of his throat. As I quickly closed the distance, with a quick twist of my head, his throat ripped out and blood sprayed all over my face and over the front half of my body. I turned around and was met with a sword in my chest. Right in between the shoulder blade met the torso. He grinned wickedly and twisted, and the blade snapped, and I fell to the ground. Quickly he spat it out as I arrived on the ground. "Good luck next time, putrid scum," he mentioned, and then he walked towards the little girl. "Time to have some fun, little filly." I stared on his horror as he pushed her to the ground, and before I could even think, my body was getting up, and I saw a purple aura surround the hilt of the broken sword. And with a lunge, I charged him. He turned around, looked at me in disbelief as I plunged the broken blade into his throat and cut his head clean off. I just looked down at the head staring up at me, and I couldn't believe what just happened. Adrenaline wearing off, and I looked down at my chest and saw the blade sticking out. I fell over on my side, and darkness started to envelop me again, but I fought it this time. Getting back up my hooves, looking at the shining silver on my black chest. I gripped it with my teeth and pulled, and green blood splurted out, and the filly let out a disheartened scream. I tugged on the blade again, and more green blood splurted out. I looked on in horror at myself as I pulled the blade free finally, watching green blood trickle off the blade and green blood trickling out of the wound in my chest. I watched as it slowly began to close before my eyes. I stared on in disbelief. The filly looked at me in horror, and she curled up in a ball and started to cry. I reached a hoof towards her, and she shuddered away, screaming monster. But I didn't want to be a monster. I wanted to help her. I heard a muffled voice behind me, and I turned around and saw a woman, or a mare rather, clad in steel armor on the ground, covered in blood. I turned around and trod towards her. She looked battered and broken and I could see the arrows sticking through her neck. As I walked closer, I could hear her muffled voice saying, "Save the girl, take her to River Wood." She coughed out before her eyes rolled back of her skull. I looked down at the crest on her armor. A sun and a moon mounted together. I didn't know what to make of this, but that was for a later date and time, I guess. As I went over to the back of the wagon looking for anything I could use to help the filly or myself, I saw a rucksack and opened it up. Finding a black cloak, I quickly draped it over myself and pulled the hood over. As I kept searching, I found a sword. Unsheathing it, I saw the words "Foricrestia" mounted on it, just down the center of the blade. I as quickly as you can with hooves and teeth, buckled the sheath into place on my body and then sheathed the sword. Put on a pair of saddlebags I found in the bag as well, and pocketed looked like potions of some kind in there. Some purple colors, some green, some blue, and some red. I'd figured out what they were later, but they looked important. And pocketed 2 bags full of coins, gold coins. That was like medieval money, wasn't it? I don't know at this point, but hopefully everything I find I can get back and get the girl to this Riverwood, or whatever the lady called it. I didn't want to leave the bodies there, so I took sheets that I cut off the top of the wagon and draped them over them and put rocks around them so that the sheets wouldn't blow off in the wind. But as for the bandits, I heaped them up in the pile in the corner, because fuck them if they think they're getting a proper burial. I walked back over to the filly, seeing if she was okay. She just stared up at me, not saying a word. "We have to get going," I told her. She just looked up at me with tired, sad eyes and nodded slowly before getting up. I handed her a small white cloak that I found in the wagon, and she donned it quickly. It was white with gold leaf patterns around the bottom of it. I walked over to the lady that was clad in steel armor and looked at my hooves and I took off her leather bracers and put them on me. Hopefully she wouldn't mind. I recovered her with a sheet and placed rocks around there. As we walked with the filly, I headed towards the road and saw a sign pointing down further to the north that said Riverwood. Walking alongside me, the filler had her head low, and we walked towards Riverwood. Hopefully we'd have easy travels, but judging by what I saw here, I highly doubt that now. We walked for a few miles before I found the village. A sign on the road said Riverwood population, and I couldn't read it for how many times it's been scratched out and rewrote. The letters and numbers were so small. But we continued walking through the open gate, and I just stared around looking for anybody, but nobody's out at this hour. I felt a blade on the back of my neck and a guard yell, "Halt!"